Hi, welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Krayden. Exciting testimony, fractious testimony at the Hogue Inquiry yesterday. I'm sure you were all watching. I saw a lot of you were. And when we come back, some comments about what it really means, what Trudeau's up to, and the implications for Canada.
So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need political change, but we also need the resolve to resist.
So what's happening at the Hogue Inquiry? Well, this is another piece of distraction. I'd say it's a brilliant piece of distraction, except it's pretty stupid. Trudeau looks like an absolute fool on the stand because he's deliberately trying to turn this into a political operation against the Conservative Party of Canada and Pierre Poilievre. Not only that, he's trying to change the focus from China to India because he thinks he can win that one. He knows he can't win the debate about China because he benefited from Chinese election interference. The evidence is overwhelming. That's what started the Hogue Inquiry. The Liberal Party benefited. Toronto MPs in the Greater Toronto Area apparently have benefited. So what did Trudeau say yesterday? I've got some names. Sounded like Joe McCarthy, actually. This is what reminded me of Joe McCarthy saying, I have a list of names of 50 communists in the State Department. And that's what started the McCarthy era. And this is what's starting the Trudeau era of making baseless claims about conservatives who are supposedly in league with China. China is helping the liberals get elected, not the conservatives. And any fool knows that. So Poilievre shot back with this letter here. And if I can read a couple lines, I will. But he didn't waste any time getting back and saying, but it was all lies. And he says in this letter, Poilievre says he's been briefed about this matter. So Justin Trudeau is suggesting Poilievre is keeping his head in the sand over this because there's Conservative MPs on this list who were conspiring with China. Now, Trudeau knows who the MPs were. He knows these weren't Conservative MPs. He knows this is a horrible joke here. My message to Justin Trudeau, release the names of all MPs that have collaborated with foreign interference. But he won't because Justin Trudeau is doing what he always does. He is lying. He is lying. And Poilievre got this message out almost within minutes of Justin Trudeau's horrendous testimony at the Hogue Inquiry, where once again he's distorting this inquiry. It's now about India interfering. And we could get into it all, and we'll get into it later, about exactly whose side is Trudeau on. He's on the side of these Kahlistani terrorists. This is how bizarre this is getting. And that is Trudeau's fight. But he's trying to smear the Conservative Party in this. And it's an absolutely baseless claim. And at the same time, what is this really about? Why is Trudeau on the stand making stupid accusations against not only Pierre Poilievre, but Tucker Carlson? And here's what this is all about. There's Sandy Ronaldo announcing this last night. A group of Liberal MPs plan to verbally ask Trudeau to step down next week, armed with their petition. That's what this is about. This is called changing the channel. And I did media relations for years with the Canadian Armed Forces. We used to love to use that term, change the channel. Put the news release out Friday afternoon so nobody notices it. But let's change the channel and let's bring up something else because we don't really feel comfortable talking about this. Well, I feel very comfortable talking about this. And it is absolutely outrageous what Trudeau is trying to do with this and where he's going with this. And Now, how is this upsetting reality here? We are on the verge of losing not only our diplomatic relationship with India, but on losing whatever trade we already have, which, as Bloomberg reports here, our trade with India is already underperforming. And this is going to hurt. You guessed it. Who does Trudeau care least about in our society? Well, no, not just small C conservatives or pro-life activists or parents. He hates farmers. And he's instituted rules against farmers. The carbon tax is all about destroying farms. His fertilizer policy of forcing farmers to use less and less fertilizer is all about destroying farms and farmers and their livelihood. So the outlook for trade for Canadian farmers is horrendous. Look at these numbers. These are the out purchases from Canada to Australia, Russian, Turkey, US. India is already shifting its lentil purchases away from Canada. And you can see that. So this is going to have grave effects on our trade. And I'm always saying, whatever happened to governments that promote trade? That's one of the good things you can say about Stephen Harper's government, is that it wasn't focused on starting wars, places, and getting involved in financing wars or giving billions of dollars to countries like Ukraine. Stephen Harper probably formulated and sealed more trade agreements than any other prime minister in the history of Canada. And he really isn't known for that, which is unfortunate because it's probably the greatest service he did. But of course, it's all falling apart now because of idiots like Justin Trudeau who want to wage war with Russia. He wants a nuclear war with Russia, it's clear. And he wants a trade war and he wants a diplomatic war with India because he thinks it's going to serve his political purposes. And it's all about serving his political purposes. I've been saying that all week, and you know how accurate that is. This is about Justin Trudeau's political survival. So I want to show you this first because this was really strange.
Amplified by Russian propaganda. And once Ukraine was invaded, we saw a lot of those channels become pro-Putin propaganda channels. And as I said, we've recently seen that RT is currently funding bloggers and other YouTube personalities of the right, such as Jordan Peterson, other names that are well known, and Tucker Carlson as
So Jordan Peterson is in the bag for Russia. And so is Tucker Carlson. I mean, this is absolutely nuts, but this is what he's saying.
well, in order to amplify messages that are destabilizing democracies.
So that was part of Justin Trudeau's outrageously stupid testimony yesterday. Not only is he lobbing grenades at Pierre Poilievre, suggesting he's somehow treasonous, suggesting it, not quite saying it, but suggesting the Conservative Party's honeycombed with traitors. They're working with China. And he has to get into Ukraine, of course, as well. And you're not allowed to have a discussion or a debate about how many tens of billions of dollars we should give away to Ukraine while our own military can barely survive. We can't talk about that. That's pro-Russian. That's pro-Putin. This is how incredibly dunce Justin Trudeau is, or intentionally dunce, because he thinks he can win this debate. And actually, he's losing it. He is losing this debate, and I want to make that quite clear. Now, let's watch some incredibly fascinating video footage that will tie this all together. Because first of all, let's review where we are here. Trudeau's fighting for his political career because he's got about 50 Liberal MPs in his caucus, one gone. And those MPs are escalating by the day. He thinks the fight with India is good politics for him because it will distract you and I from the real issues here. Not going to happen either. And who is Trudeau supporting? What is the identity politics behind this? Kahlistani groups that are highly suspect. Remember, it's the Kahlistanis that brought down the Air India, one of the worst aviation disasters, terrorist disasters in history. These people are just like Al Qaeda. And so that's whose side Justin Trudeau's on.
Like what Prime Minister Trudeau, when they made this statement yesterday publicly, it shows their Canada's unwavering commitment to justice, a rule of law, and the national security. And Six for Justice have been communicating with the Prime Minister office for the last 2 to 3 years.
So Seeks for Justice, whatever the hell that means, it's another misnomer title. They've been communicating with the Prime Minister's office for the last 2 to 3 years. What? Leaking information to the PMO, guiding the PMO, telling Justin Trudeau where his attention should be. And these are people who you don't want to see in a dark night.
Detailing all the spy network that Indian High Commissioner, who has been
Now, that's a little disturbing, don't you think?
Social media misinformation and disinformation that were present back in 2015, but not nearly as sophisticated or pervasive as they are now, have caused a lot of challenges. One of the other things is in 2015.
Can he say a sentence without saying challenges? Yes, you are challenged, mentally challenged at times, Justin Trudeau. And you're politically challenged right now because you are in a very bad position. And you'll use any incident or any policy or any excuse to divert it.
As we watched the American impending election of Donald Trump. And
well, thank you very much for Justin Trudeau. You have predicted that Donald Trump will be reelected. That's very satisfying. Did somebody tell you that's going to be the case? But thank you anyway for reassuring us in Canada that Donald Trump will be the president of the United States again. That's very good. And that's clearly what you just said there. But once again, you're blaming everything. Yeah. And I did want to say the footage we just, I want to thank Mocha for the footage we just used there, and have a look at the description, because all the people who contributed to the video footage we're using, we mentioned in the description. I was just reminded of that. So there's a real live moment for you here, folks. I always like to do that, and it's important to do that because there's people out there who are getting video clips that the mainstream media aren't getting, and I can't always get because I'm doing other reporting. So thank you. And
the rise of right-wing populism around the world, that seems...
Where have we seen that one before? It's all about right-wing populism around the world. Who the hell are you, Justin Trudeau, to tell people how to vote? Who the hell are you to say what is right-wing populism if it doesn't agree with your policies? It's right-wing? There's a lot of people who disagree with you who are traditionally left-wing. There's a lot of people who disagree with you who wouldn't really call themselves right-wing. They just really can't stand your policies because you want to stomp on free speech. And you're such an arrogant SOB sitting there dictating how Canada must think. Nobody likes that.
To be one of the big threats that are big concerns that we had that was potentially destabilizing, things like Brexit coming along, Donald Trump's election.
Once again, Brexit was an election. They had a referendum on Brexit. The British people decided they wanted Brexit. Who the hell are you saying that's destabilizing, Justin Trudeau?
There was a lift of right-wing populism. It was very much the moment we were living in 2015, 2016, 2017, and grappling with as a
Another thing, can this moron ever tie his tie straight? Can he ever get it so it's not askew? It must represent how his brain is askew and he's not thinking straight either.
Responsible, progressive, rule of law democracy that believes in facts and evidence as the basis for policy decisions.
You don't believe in facts or evidence, or you wouldn't have some of the haywire, straight, crazy policies you have, which are not based on facts and evidence. They're based on your ideology.
As we are as a government. But over the subsequent years, it is not just about sort of right-wing populism that is still there.
How many times has he said right-wing populism? Is this his third or fourth time in about 60 seconds? It's everything that is bad in the world to Justin Trudeau is attributable to right-wing populism, which he never really defines.
There is a significant rise of authoritarianism and an aggressive decline of
authoritarianism. Does that mean governments that invoke the Emergencies Act, freeze bank accounts, and sick the police on peaceful protesters? Would you call that authoritarianism?
Democracy and democratic values in many corners of the world that are aggressively attempting to destabilize mature democracies, where populism can sometimes sort of twist the rules and the emphasis and, twist the facts a little bit for its own gain. The attacks on the cores of our democracy and our institutions that the authoritarian narratives and attempts at disinformation and propaganda and sowing chaos.
Well, he's opening up the complete greatest hits album from Justin Trudeau, which is misinformation, disinformation, right-wing populism, authoritarianism. It's perfect distraction, and this is what he does every time. But it's just like it's the same rant we hear time and time again. Every time Justin Trudeau wants to distract people from his own failings, his own failures, his own policy disasters, it's all because of disinformation, misinformation, and right-wing populism.
In our democracies are much more serious and severe over these past years than they have been. Because I am Prime Minister and privy to all these informations, I have the names of a number of parliamentarians, former parliamentarians and or candidates in the Conservative Party of Canada.
Now, like I said at the beginning of this broadcast, if you know anything about the Red Scare in the 1950s, it all began at a news conference with Senator Joe McCarthy, Republican from Wisconsin, who waved a list around in the air about all of these communists. He said he had a list of 500 communists working in the State Department. Of course, he didn't have a list. We never saw the list. It was all a political ruse. It was all a game. And here's Justin Trudeau, the neo-McCarthyite, waving around. He doesn't even wave it around. He just says, hey, I got it in my head. I'm privy to all this because I'm the Prime Minister, and I've got all these names. But I'm just going to smear people by allegation.
Who are engaged or at high risk of, or for whom there is clear intelligence around foreign interference. And I have directed CSIS and others to try and inform the Conservative Party leader to be warned and armed to be able to make decisions that protect the integrity of that party, of its members, from attempts at activities around foreign interference.
I heard nothing about Liberal Party MPs. And he's told Pierre Poilievre to clean house, Pierre. Please clean house for the good of your party and for the good of Canada. Does this man look like he's lying as he haltingly tries to get this information out, like he's thinking on his feet? How am I going to say this so I don't look like a compulsive chronic liar that I am? And it's not working.
The decision of the leader of the Conservative Party to not receive the necessary clearance to get those names and protect the integrity of his party is bewildering to me and entirely lacks common sense.
Well, you're the one lacking common sense. And this is what prompted Pierre Poilievre to get that statement out, as he did, very quickly on X, to say that you're full of crap, Justin.
Particularly when you look at the NSICOP report that clearly lays out, the public NSICOP report that clearly lays out that in both of the most recent Conservative leadership races, there was foreign interference. The fact that there seems to be absolutely no curiosity or openness in trying to figure out what happened or whether someone was compromised or whether a foreign country impacted those leadership races is simply irresponsible. The fact that we see, and I'm getting a little more partisan than I've tried to in this case, but it is so...
He's getting a little more partisan than he'd like to be. What an utter load of nonsense and rubbish this man is shoveling right now. It's just incredible he would stoop this low. And this is all about the politics of distraction, the politics of projection, which liberals in Canada and Democrats in the United States do so well. Blame the other guy for what you are yourself guilty of doing. And that's what Justin Trudeau is doing here in his classic style.
Egregious to me that the leader of the official opposition, who is certainly trying very hard to become prime minister, is choosing to play partisan games with foreign interference and accusations on foreign interference, but not taking it the least bit serious as regards to his own responsibilities as party leader, or even to get top officials within his party briefed up as they bring on candidates from across the country, is inexplicable and, quite frankly, concerning.
The diplomatic face-off between India and Canada, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has made a big confession. He has said
now, this is how the Indian news is covering this jackass.
That he had only shared intelligence and not hard evidence when he referred to India as involved in Niger's killing. Let's listen into what he had said.
I'm putting up some of your comments right now, by the way, because you're making some very salient points, some very interesting points, and I'd like to share them with people. Thank you for contributing. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being a part of this as we watch the end of this broadcast. This is absolutely fascinating because nobody is taking this nutcake seriously.
We chose to continue to work behind the scenes to try and get India to cooperate with us. Their asks of us was, well, how much do you know? Give us the evidence you have on this. And our response was, well, it's within your security agencies. You should be looking into how much they know. You should be engaging. It's, oh, no, tell us what you know. Show us the evidence. And at that point, it was primarily intelligence, not hard evidentiary proof. So we said, well, let's work together and look into your security services, and maybe we can get that done.
Big admission coming in there.
Hey, guess what? They don't think Trudeau is telling the truth either. So this isn't flying too well around the world. And I love this. He is a wacko. Kitty Green, thank you for your comment. That's wonderful. Trudeau thinks he's Kaiser Sose. Okay. Yeah. I have to wonder how long it took to memorize all this rhetoric. Colleen, Coulterman, Valentine. Yeah, I wonder how long. Well, of course, he's not memorizing it. You notice he's got an earpiece in there? And he doesn't need translation because he speaks French and English equally badly. And he's not listening for translation. He's listening for talking points because this man is vacuous. Do you really believe for a minute, for instance, that, he says, I gave direction to CSIS. Do you believe for a minute he's giving direction to CSIS on anything? except maybe to say, smear my opponents. Do you think he's giving intelligence direction to CSIS? Is he capable of doing that? This is a man who lives his life addicted to binge watching television shows that were made for teenagers. He loves graphic comic novels. He loves sci-fi. He doesn't like reading government reports or memos. That's boring. So do you really believe he's giving direction to government departments? Of course not. This man is not a leader in any sense of the word. Just looking at some of your comments here. Thank you so much for watching. Before we leave here, I wanted to make one note here. If you had a chance to watch, and we will be touching on the U.S. election because we're 3 weeks away from the U.S. election. This is going to be, I know every time there's a U.S. election, it's the most historic in the history of the country. This could be, well, the most historic because Kamala Harris is not only completely unfit to be president of the United States, she might bring the country into a nuclear war on two fronts while she brings on a Great Depression. But if you saw the mainstream media response to this disastrous interview she did last night on Fox News with Bret Baier, who's not in the bag for Donald Trump. Bret Baier is an objective journalist in the tradition of people like Mike Wallace and Walter Cronkite, who, I don't know, maybe they voted Democrat in their private lives. But when they got in front of the microphone interviewing politicians, they asked tough questions. And Bret Baier asked tough questions. Kamala Harris looked like she was completely losing it, and it was embarrassing to watch. And her handlers had to come out before the interview was even half over and wave to say, hey, it's over. We got to get out of here. But the mainstream media was painting it as a triumph for Kamala Harris. I couldn't believe some of the headlines this morning. She responded to tough questions the way Donald Trump has. Harris paints Trump as threat, draws contrast with Biden, and combative Fox News interview. She was pathetic. This was the equivalent of Joe Biden's debate with former President Donald Trump, where Biden collapsed, imploded, and looked absolutely like he was in the last stages of dementia. Kamala Harris looks like she can't put a thought together, as she always does. And this was very, very embarrassing to watch. So that's all I've got for you today, folks. I'm going to be back with more of this tomorrow as we continue to unearth what's actually going on. We're going to keep our eyes on this petition that's being circulated. I'm going to see if I can talk to some liberals who are not in the House right now, but who are outside of the House and who might have some good intelligence on what's really brewing here. But this is fascinating material. So thank you so much for watching today. Gone a little bit over time. I try to keep this under 30 minutes. And I guess I've done that. But we will continue to stay on top of this information and give you all the news that you need to know. And by the way, before I forget, I'm not going to show the whole video, but remember this t-shirt? This is our best seller right now. Somebody just got 3 of these. I'm a Canadian, a free Canadian. This is the t-shirt based on John Diefenbaker's preamble to the 1962 Canadian Bill of Rights. That's coming out in the sweatshirt, probably by this afternoon at the earliest, certainly by tomorrow. The weather's getting a bit cooler here in the fall. Get yourself a sweatshirt as well. I will. Thanks for watching today, and I will be back tomorrow with all the news that you need to know so you can continue to